Imagine a future where Africa powers itself, not with oil, but with trains that defy gravity. The African Hyperloop isn't just a dream. It's a vision of a continent rewriting the rules of motion and energy. A system powered not by fossil fuels or electricity grids, but by the invisible currents of radio frequency energy flowing through the air. It's a bold idea born from the same genius minds driving Africa's self-powered revolution. Engineers inspired by Maxwell Chikumbutso's wireless energy breakthroughs and other pioneers who dared to question physics itself. Now, picture a gleaming pod levitating silently across the plains of Kenya, cutting through the savannah with no smoke, no wires, and no need for refueling. The hum of magnetic repulsion replaces the roar of engines, and passengers glide between cities faster than any bullet train ever conceived. It's not science fiction. It's the African RF-powered Hyperloop, a transportation miracle designed to run on energy pulled straight from the air. This system doesn't depend on oil tankers or electric grids. It feeds on ambient frequencies, converting them into motion, speed, and life. And that's where the panic begins, because if Africa perfects this, the global balance of energy power will shift forever. For over a century, nations have fought wars, struck deals, and built empires over fuel. But Africa, long underestimated, may now be preparing to leap beyond fuel entirely. Imagine a continent where transportation networks run indefinitely without burning a single drop of oil. The implications are staggering. America, a nation built on oil dominance and industrial control, is watching nervously. Because if African nations succeed in creating a Hyperloop network that runs without traditional energy, it would mark the end of oil dependence as we know it. The US, once the energy giant, could find itself playing catch-up in a world powered by frequency instead of fuel. The African RF Hyperloop is more than a train. It's a declaration of independence, a symbol that the continent is ready to own its technological destiny. Let's step into how this system actually works. At its heart lies the concept of wireless power transmission through radio frequencies, an idea once laughed at, now being tested in real prototypes. These frequencies, emitted by powerful transmitters along the route, energize receiver coils embedded within the Hyperloop pods. As the pods move through the magnetic corridor, they draw and convert these frequencies into usable energy for propulsion and levitation. It's like having an invisible highway of power stretched across the continent. No fuel stations, no grid failures, no carbon emissions, just continuous, limitless motion. The pods themselves are marvels of engineering, lightweight, aerodynamic capsules made from graphene composites, reducing drag and enhancing energy efficiency. Inside, passengers experience near-zero noise, as magnetic levitation eliminates friction. Traveling at speeds approaching 1,200 kilometers per hour, the African Hyperloop could connect Cairo to Cape Town in under 4 hours. But the most groundbreaking aspect isn't the speed, it's the independence. For decades, Africa's energy future was dictated by imports, pipelines, and foreign investments. Now, this new wave of homegrown technology could rewrite that narrative entirely. The RF-powered system doesn't rely on centralized power plants or oil reserves. It thrives on ambient electromagnetic energy, captured and recycled continuously. This means every kilometer of track effectively becomes a self-sustaining ecosystem. And if this technology scales beyond transportation, into homes, factories, and even cities, the world's entire economic hierarchy could crumble. That's why the United States, along with other major energy-dependent nations, is paying attention. Because in this new model, the countries that control frequency technology, not oil reserves, will rule the next industrial age. America's fear isn't just about losing its influence, it's about losing its markets. If African nations no longer need imported fuel, the global oil demand could plummet. Energy giants would suffer, trade agreements would collapse, and for the first time, Africa would hold the keys to its own energy future. But before that future arrives, enormous challenges remain. Building an RF-powered Hyperloop requires unprecedented coordination, engineering, physics, and infrastructure working in harmony. Massive transmitters must be installed along hundreds of kilometers of track, each precisely tuned to ensure continuous power flow. Safety systems must manage electromagnetic interference to protect both passengers and nearby communities. And governments must come together under a unified vision of technological sovereignty. Yet, despite these obstacles, progress is being made in surprising places. In Ethiopia, engineers have been experimenting with wireless energy transmission between urban centers. In Nigeria, a startup is developing low-frequency power corridors designed for autonomous vehicles. In South Africa, researchers are exploring how to merge magnetic levitation with ambient RF fields. Together, these projects are laying the foundation for what could become the world's first fuel-free transport grid. And once these systems prove viable on a regional level, continental expansion is inevitable. The African Union has already discussed cross-border infrastructure corridors for next-generation mobility. Combine that with RF-powered propulsion, and you have a blueprint for a transportation revolution unlike anything the world has seen. Imagine farmers in remote Kenya sending goods to major cities in minutes, not hours. Imagine students in rural Ghana commuting to universities across the nation with zero travel emissions. Imagine freight containers gliding silently between ports and inland hubs, powered entirely by airwaves. This is what the African Hyperloop promises, a redefinition of connection, commerce, and climate responsibility. And yet, as the world watches, the US finds itself cornered by its own industrial legacy. For decades, it invested billions in fossil fuel infrastructure, pipelines, refineries, and transport systems locked into carbon economics. Transitioning away from that overnight is almost impossible. Meanwhile, African nations, unburdened by old systems, have the rare advantage of starting fresh. They can leapfrog directly into the future without dismantling the past. That's what terrifies Washington, because it's not just about transportation, it's about the emergence of a new kind of power. Power that doesn't come from oil rigs or nuclear plants, but from innovation, independence, and intelligence. The fear isn't irrational. If Africa develops its own RF power grid, it could export the technology globally. Europe, Asia, and Latin America would rush to adopt it, leaving traditional energy exporters scrambling. America's grip on energy economics could fracture overnight. In response, whispers of partnerships and strategic cooperation have already begun surfacing. Tech giants and defense contractors are quietly monitoring African research labs. Investors are reaching out to African innovators, hoping to either fund or control the coming revolution. But the heart of this story isn't just about fear or control. It's about hope. Hope that, for the first time, Africa's natural resource isn't something extracted from the ground, but something generated from the mind. The RF Hyperloop symbolizes that shift, a move from consumption to creation, from dependence to self-sufficiency, from following to leading. Still, skepticism persists. Critics argue that wireless energy transmission over long distances is inefficient. They claim atmospheric interference and power loss make it impractical for large-scale use. But what they forget is how every innovation begins as impossible. The airplane, the radio, the computer all faced ridicule before reshaping the world. And now, the same narrative is unfolding in Africa's tech revolution. Across research labs, engineers are refining resonant frequency tuning, increasing power transfer efficiency beyond previous theoretical limits. Advanced materials like metamagnetic alloys are being tested to stabilize electromagnetic fields around Hyperloop tunnels. Even AI-driven feedback systems are being designed to optimize energy flow in real time. Every month brings new progress, pushing this concept closer to reality. And when the first RF-powered Hyperloop prototype makes its maiden voyage, it will mark not just a transportation milestone, but a declaration of independence. The moment Africa proves it can power itself without fuel, without dependency, the world's energy map will be redrawn. The US, watching from across the ocean, will face a choice: adapt or resist. If it adapts, it could partner in this new era, sharing research and co-developing frequency-based infrastructure. If it resists, it risks being left behind, clinging to industries that no longer define progress. The same dynamic that once shaped oil politics could now define frequency politics. Who controls the airwaves will control motion, power, and trade. and Africa is positioning itself to lead that race. But beyond economics, there's a deeper message here. This isn't just about breaking free from fuel. It's about rewriting the narrative of African potential. For centuries, innovation was imported, not homegrown. Now that's changing. With each step toward the RF Hyperloop, Africa is saying to the world, we don't just consume technology, we create it. That mindset shift is revolutionary. It's cultural, psychological, and generational. Young African engineers, driven by curiosity rather than conformity, are reimagining the continent's role in global innovation. And the world, used to seeing Africa as a market, not a maker, is struggling to comprehend what comes next. This is what truly causes panic, not just in the US, but everywhere old power structures still hold sway. Because once innovation becomes borderless, control becomes impossible. RF-powered transportation is only the beginning. If energy can be transmitted wirelessly to moving vehicles, then why not to homes, hospitals, or industries? Imagine cities where power grids no longer exist, where energy simply flows through the atmosphere like Wi-Fi. That's the logical next step. In Africa, where every device, every building, every vehicle is connected to a unified web of ambient energy. No blackouts, no pollution, no monopolies, just abundance. The transition won't be easy. It will face resistance from entrenched interests worldwide. But history has always favored the bold. And right now, Africa stands on the edge of its boldest chapter yet. The RF-powered Hyperloop isn't merely a train, it's a statement. A promise that the continent no longer needs permission to lead. And as the first pods glide across the horizon, humming with invisible energy, the world will finally understand what's happening. This isn't the future of transportation. It's the rebirth of independence. Africa is not waiting for permission. It's building the future one frequency at a time. And somewhere in Washington, in boardrooms filled with oil maps and energy forecasts, someone will realize what that means. The panic won't come from fear of failure. It will come from the realization that Africa has finally figured out how to win.